October 9th, 1997, a landmark release in fighting game history, as Dead or Alive, Tecmo's first polygonal 3D fighting game released in late November of the previous year, was released on the Sega Saturn in Japan. As more gaming publications overseas caught on to this well-made home console port, players' interest in Dead or Alive began to grow. However, in the rest of the world, the Sega Saturn was all but on the brink of being phased out of the 5th generation console market, and by 1998, the console would be discontinued internationally. Despite his preference for the Sega Saturn, Tomonobu Itagaki and his crew knew a change in direction had to be made if their hit 3D fighting game had any chance of breaking into the international console market. Dead or Alive was remade and reimagined for the leading console, the Sony PlayStation, releasing in Japan on March 12, 1998, followed by a North American release just a few weeks later, and in Europe during the summer of that year. The PlayStation remake of Dead or Alive was not merely a beat-for-beat port of the original arcade and Saturn release. There were new stages, new music, and new costumes and features not seen in the Saturn version. But possibly the biggest addition would come in the form of yet another Kunoichi just like Kasumi, distinguished by her short lavender hair, crimson red pupils, and an entirely different playstyle. Little did fans know that in the series' future, she would become one of the most beloved and fully developed characters in Dead or Alive, and one that would even have an impact in this entire shared universe. Like in Season 1, much of the story will be based on the retcon DOA Dimension storyline, and in addition, all relevant plot points related to Ayane from Ninja Gaiden and Fatal Frame, yes, even Fatal Frame, will be addressed in this episode. I'm Osmic.
Hi, I'm UGS Bill Hustle.
I'm Smart, Force of Nature.
And we welcome you to the second season of Dead or Alive Lore Explained.
腰が要よ。
ドロヴァンめ。
譲る気はないわよ。
もっと俺をたぎらせろ。
奥義のフルコース、お気に召して。
ザック様が嵐を呼ぶ。嵐吹く予感に似たり。
これが無限転身流よ。Get ready, fire!
For 2 years since its inception, Kasumi has been established as the main protagonist in the face of the Dead or Alive series. But unlike most fighting games, Dead or Alive lacked a secondary protagonist that served as the antithesis to Kasumi. In Street Fighter, you had Ryu and Ken. With the Virtua Fighter series, you had Akira and Jackie. Samurai Showdown had Haomaru and Genjiro. With King of Fighters, you had Kyo and Iori. Tekken had Kazuya and Heihachi, and in the Darkstalker series, Dimitri had Morrigan or vice versa, depending on who you talk to. Sure, you could argue that Ryu Hayabusa filled the checkmark as DOA's secondary protagonist, but he was already an established character in his own game. Team Ninja needed someone more original, and one that would stand out. Of course, she had to be a female character because they easily stand out in DOA. It also helped that, let's just say, Team Ninja knows how to do 3D modeling. But it wasn't enough that she had to exist as the Ken to Kasumi's Ryu. She needed an original fighting style that was still different from Kasumi, and a compelling story which would have fans coming back for more. On terms of character design, she would go through some radical changes from the drawing board, ranging from a blonde twin sister of Kasumi to a raven-haired Kunoichi clad in pink. When all was said and done, the finalized character would come in the form of Ayane, debuting in the PlayStation remake of Dead or Alive.
Aside from her distinct short purple hair and red eyes that feel like they're staring into your soul, Ayane at the time was a fair-skinned 16-year-old girl, now 18, who's petite in stature with a slender athletic build. She can almost always be seen with her signature favorite purple bandana. Her most iconic costume was a strapless purple dress with pull-on sleeves, stockings, and boots to match. The dress is tied together around her hips with a large obi bow with a knot appearing on her back, and her dress is given further distinction with a pink butterfly decorated on her skirt, which is the spirit animal she associates herself with. As Kasumi's preferred weapon of choice is the wakizashi, Ayane's weapon of choice is the fumakodachi, a pair of short blades handed down for generations in the Hanjimon school of Mugen Tenshin. She also has her unique set of ranged weapons, the flash kunai, that are throwable weapons lined with explosives. She also attaches scrolls to her kunai as a discrete form of communication with Ryu Hayabusa behind the scenes. Ayane's namesake is translated as colorful sound or colorful design in English. Depending on the context, it can have two meanings. It can describe someone or something that is perfectly built for a purpose, or in Ayane's case, a natural-born kunoichi trained to perfection. In a different context, it only complements her colorful character design, but may also explain her favorite hobby, being beauty treatment, and paying very special attention to her appearance. Speaking of which, I recall her Japanese voice actress playing another character like that.
As a stark contrast to Kasumi, Ayane has a more hard-edged personality, being more stern, callous, disciplined, and having an overall cynical outlook on everyday life. Since childhood, Ayane has, with few exceptions, known only rejection from the very village she was born and raised in. And at the root of it all is the hatred of the father who abandoned her before she was even born, leaving her to be damned in the shadows of the Mugen Tenshin village as a bastard child. But rather than give in to despair, it only motivated her to better herself for the one thing she wants the most: acceptance. Under the harsh training regimen of the Hajimon style of Mugen Tenshin, Ayane was trained to near perfection as a one-woman army. Underneath the appearance of a sweet little girl is a devious and surprisingly violent force in nature. Well, not me, of course. Capable of slaying dozens and sometimes even hundreds of warriors and demons coming in droves, thanks largely in part to her powerful ninpo, the Hajin Shinza. A powerful technique that imbues the caster's body with an aura possessing the power of all nature and creation, obliterating her foes in a massive shockwave within at least a 1-mile radius surrounding the caster. In the hands of a lesser ninja, it would destroy the user. But in the hands of one as especially disciplined as Ayane, she may be the first in her clan to have truly mastered the technique. Though, despite being highly disciplined and seemingly devoid of any fun, there are times when we are reminded Ayane is a human at the end of the day, and one with complex relationships, which we'll get into as the episode progresses.
Ayane's fighting style is one that focuses on circular attacks, pokes, a variety of back-facing techniques, and high-octane evasion. She's also one of the only 2 ninjas in the DOA series that doesn't have a teleport in her attack list, the other being Momiji. As of DOA 4, she has the fastest low poke of the cast, and is mostly used to check an opponent's defense against lows since it can't be punished. She also comes equipped with the deadly side-switching commando that guarantees certain attacks and launches in most games except DOA 4. In DOA 5 onward, this side-switching throw would also be an expert hold against mid-punches. She also has a mid-kick hold that launches an opponent high into the air, allowing for some deadly air juggle combo setups. In DOA 5 onward, this would be repurposed as an expert hold instead of her standard one. As the game progressed, she would gain new techniques which would roll her in and out of harm's way of ranged attacks, allowing her to whiff, punish in unpredictable and creative ways. If I were you, I wouldn't want to fight a well-versed Ayane in an infinite stage. But seriously, who plays DOA for infinite stages?
With a standout character design, a tragic and complex backstory that expands even to games outside of her home series, and a playstyle that only made her more unpredictable and evasive with each installment, Ayane is not only one of the most recognizable and complete DOA characters of all time, but her massive game resume alone could make her a contender for a mascot of Team Ninja alongside Ryu Hayabusa and Kasumi.
Our story of Ayane begins 18 years prior in a village near Mount Miyama, home of the Mugen Tenshin clan. Raidu's younger brother Shiden had been chosen to lead the clan as its 17th heir, much to his chagrin. Out of spite for his younger brother, Raidu crosses paths with Shirin's wife, Ayami, and to put it bluntly, rapes her. It wouldn't take long for Shirin to discover Raidu's unforgivable crime. And knowing he would be killed, he exiled himself, leaving Ayami pregnant. What a freaking bastard! Almost a year later, after the baby, whom we know is Ayane by now, is born, Shirin could not bring it upon himself to kill her. So instead he made a compromise. He asked the leader of the Hajimon sect, Genra, to care for Ayane and raise her as if she were his own. And with that, Ayane's childhood would be set, unaware of the identity of her true family and destined to endure years of filthy, disgusting, despicable scorn.
Several years later, Ayane would become best friends with Kasumi, unaware that she's her half-sister. Their favorite pastime was competing to catch the most fish, which would always result in the village having plenty to go around for months on end. Her memories with Hayate were equally as pleasant, as he saw the good in her despite how the villagers acted around her. But when playtime was over, reality slowly set in for Ayane, as the villagers shrugged her off as if she were a stray animal as opposed to a child. Or worse yet, a demon child. Leaving her to her own devices, even in harsh weather, as she solemnly walked home. Eventually, Ayame would reveal to her daughter the true circumstances behind her birth before Genra requested to Shinden that Ayane begin her training in the Hajimon school. Her innocence lost, Ayane would have to carve a new life for herself, throwing away her false past as she trims her long lavender hair with the Fuma Kodachi.
With the hatred of her birth father burning in her heart, and a growing contempt and jealousy for the half-sister she once sought as her best friend, Ayane was determined to prove herself to all the villagers by becoming the best Hajimon ninja she could possibly be. And the early beginnings of her life as a ninja would have her cross paths with the legendary Ryu Hayabusa.
At the age of 14, Ayane's earliest known mission came under the employment of Ryu Hayabusa's uncle Mirai, acting as a spy for him. Ayane would soon discover the Hayabusa village in flames. She quickly informed Mirai of the situation, yet unaware, Ryu Hayabusa was arriving in his fortress as a guest.
Ryu-sama.
As Ryu Hayabusa rushed to his fellow villagers' aid, Mirai tasked Ayane to investigate as well. However, as she arrived, the village raider, Doku, and his army of samurai overpowered this young kunoichi. Despite this, she makes a narrow escape, resting in the armory's top floor. Hayabusa would soon find her, and she warns him about Doku before falling unconscious.
暗黒の鎧武者竜様、あれとまともに戦っては。
Recovering a few months later, Mirai tasks Ayane to follow Ryu Hayabusa to Tairan, sending them various intel along the way via her kunai scrolls. After Hayabusa meets the fiend hunter Rachel after a fight with the Hydra Cubus, Ayane crosses paths with him again, and Hayabusa asks her to protect Rachel from any further harm. Eventually, the connection to Doku and Mirai reveals itself, and understandably, Ayane cuts ties with Mirai, watching behind the scenes as Hayabusa strikes down his true enemy.
In Ninja Gaiden 2 Sigma, Ryu Hayabusa's father, Joe Hayabusa, asks Ayane to retrieve the Eye of the Dragon, which is required to unlock the true power of the Dragon Sword and defeat the Black Spider Clan that attacked him. Ayane's mission takes her to the Aqua Capital, ultimately encountering a resurrected Obaba who possessed the eye.
そこら中蜘蛛の巣だらけ。どうやらここで間違いなさそう
だ。誰かと思えば天神の小娘か。
あなたはジグモのおばば。とっくに往生してると思ってた。マガタマはどこ？
威勢の良い小娘じゃこと。そなたの目当てはこれかいな。
あなたまさか。
竜のマガタマの力とくと思い知れ。
Ayane ultimately defeats Obaba and delivers the eye to Ryu Hayabusa at the village after his return from the Amazon, witnessing the true Dragon Sword's true power, and is put in awe.
あやね、離れてろ。
ユウキャンの誠の姿が。
Finally, in Ninja Gaiden 3, Ayane is tasked by Hayate to lend Hayabusa his favorite sword and clan heirloom, the Jinran Maru, as a substitute for the Dragon Sword which was cursed inside his right arm by the region of the mask.
ジンランマ。耳が早いな。
大使の恋とのことです。一時貸すだけだと。
すまない。颯によろしく伝えてくれ。
その腕、一度里で見るべきだと。
ああ、この剣が片付けばいずれ立ち寄ろう。
ご無事で。
After completing her task, Ayane headed to Paris for a vacation, only to have it short-lived by some unwanted guests in a massage parlor. After killing the LOA terrorists that broke in, she proceeded to the French Capitol building, encountering 3 alchemists.
これまでよ。観念なさい。
小娘笑わせてくれる。覚悟するがいい。終わりだ。
強がっても無駄。
After defeating them, she realized missiles were about to launch in her vicinity, only to have CIA agent Irene Liu stop the missiles and continue to assist her in infiltrating the carrier the Black Narwhal, also owned by the LOA.
Maまったくヒヤヒヤさせないでほしいわ。これで
奴らの通信暗号を解析、軍事衛星のコントロールを奪えたわ。
もう空に怯える必要はなくなったと。私の仕事は終わりかしら。
まだよ。ここから連中の正体を引きずり出す。竜も追っているけど、あの状態じゃ。頼れるのはあなたしかいない。
仕方ないわね。使われてあげるわ。つくづく趣味の悪いやつらね。
時間はあまりないわよ。
誰に物を言ってるのかしら。心配してるのか警戒してるのかわからないわね。 GPS 発信機、作戦には行き過ぎよね。私たちをずっと追おうとでも。
CIA は警戒してる。敵でも味方でもない危険すぎる忍者たち。
あなたは？
私はただ竜を助けたいだけ。
まあいいわ。あとはあなたたちが追うのね。
残念。追うのは竜よ。
The two women part ways, with Ayane having more questions than answers about her connection to Ryu Hayabusa.
2 years have passed since Ayane witnessed the Hayabusa village burn to the ground. But this was nothing compared to what would happen in the Mugen Tenshin village one dark and stormy night. Ayane, now 16 years old, hears of an ambush in a village by a single person possessing terrifying power and skill, demanding to challenge the one who possesses a technique called the Torn Sky Blast. The old assailant held a villager hostage as Ayane and Hayate burst into the sea. In that instant, Ayane recognized the man and yelled out his name in a fit of unbridled rage. Yet, after all her training, it was still not enough to defeat her evil father, and Hayate had no choice but to step in, while being taunted by Raido, who accused him of letting a woman fight his own battle. And as a result, well, you know how it ends by now. Hayate gets infiltrated, Kasumi loses her Ichi, Am sprays the village, Ayane is ordered to move in for the Ilke, Christy yells, "Get to the chopper!" And the two sisters ultimately meet in the locale of the first DOA tournament with their eyes on the prize. Raido's head on a stick! Actually, it's prize money, but they don't care about that shit. Because, you know, Raido's death is where it's at. I mean, that's totally gonna bring Hayate out of his coma and heal his spine, right? Right?
Ayane and Kasumi make it as far as the semifinals, with Kasumi ultimately taking the victory and being the top contender to challenge Raido. Meanwhile, Ayane makes a rendezvous with Ryu Hayabusa, and the two arrive back to the Danger Zone arena, which just exploded after Kasumi delivered a fatal blow to Raido with the Torn Sky Blast. After the smoke is cleared, however, Kasumi is nowhere to be found. Hayabusa concludes that she was probably kidnapped, and Ayane reluctantly follows him, believing Kasumi to be more trouble than she's worth.
One night in the Mugen Tenshin village, Kasumi can be seen returning back to the very place she was exiled, standing by her brother's bedside, who is still in a coma. Ayane discovers Kasumi, and in a matter of seconds, Kasumi, who in actuality is Kasumi Alpha, lets out a blast of energy that projects an illusion for Ayane, in which she summons the Tengu Bunkatsubo to kill her.
ここは颯様、天狗様のご降臨。結界が解かれている。様、何者？おやり。
Defeating the illusion, Ayane manages to wake up right in front of Genra's doorstep. When she comes to, Ayane reports the strange event to her master and surrogate father Genra. He concludes that the seal of the Miyama tree had been broken free, and the malevolent Tengu Bunkatsubo along with it. Genra then tells Ayane to rendezvous with Ryu Hayabusa in Europe to report this urgent matter.
After Hayabusa and Irene rescue Kasumi from the Dootech Germany lab, Kasumi once again takes off on her own to search for Hayate against Hayabusa's wishes. Her search would even take her to the ends of the earth, where Ayane would cross paths with her once again under orders from Hayabusa, giving back her wakizashi she lost in the Danger Zone arena during the tournament before fighting each other. Kasumi wins the fight, but not before Ayane would attempt to blast her with the Hajin Shinzan, which Kasumi manages to dodge before escaping. At some point, it is suggested that Ayane returned to the village and was subject to mind control around the same time Hayate, Hayabusa, and Kasumi all arrived near the Miyama tree. Lo and behold, Genra reveals himself as the one who broke the Miyama seal in the first place, and uses Ayane to destroy Hayabusa and Hayate, with Kasumi Alpha showing up out of nowhere to assist the mind-controlled Kunoichi. In the end, Hayabusa and Hayate emerge victorious, breaking Ayane from the spell, causing Kasumi Alpha to flee, and giving the real Kasumi her own opportunity to escape after falling unconscious in a fight with the then amnesiac Hayate. It was back to business as usual. Find Kasumi and make her pay for breaking the Shinobi Code.
Ayane and Hayate head back to the Mugen Tenshin village to inform Shiden of everything that happened up to this point, including Genra's betrayal and Kasumi's unanswered penance for straying the village. The latter, in which Ayane insisted must take priority, which Hayate didn't take kindly to.
そうか。ならば、家督も告げる。のう。
それは霞が見つからぬうちは。
何を言う。本来家督は健全なる長男が継ぐもの。
その通りにございます。
綾音。
あの者は自ら里を捨てた裏切り者。きっと元羅とも通じているのです。
貴様、破門にされたいのか。
颯様。
バカ者。今は仲間割れをしておる場合ではない。綾音よ、お下がれ。
As a result, Ayane fell to despair, wanting to throw away her life at a nearby waterfall. What follows is one of the best scenes in the Retcon storyline, which is worth watching in its entirety.
颯様に嫌われた。
綾音、そこで何をしているのです？小さい頃、よくかすみと遊びに来てたわよね。よく取った鮎の数を競い合っていたっけ。おかげで夕食は鮎だらけ。辛いのでしょう。
岡田様。
私はそなたの母親。その呼び方はよしなさい。
颯様を怒らせてしまいました。
そう。あの子はあなたたち妹のことをいつも気にしているから。だからつい
いつも姉様のことばかり。
かすみもそなたも私にとっては同じ血を分けた娘。もちろん颯だってそれは変わらない。私たちには忍びの掟よりも強い家族の絆があるのよ。そのことを忘れないで。
母様。
だからお願い、かすみを助けてあげて。あの子は一人で全てを背負おうとしているの。
It was this moment we knew that the events of the third Their Life tournament were centered around Ayane.
The next day, Ayane would spot a fever-stricken Kasumi in Kyoto, disguised as a school student and being consoled by Kokoro. Realizing she was spotted, Kasumi had no choice but to escape, with Ayane rudely telling Kokoro to step aside.
ちょっとあんた、今髪の長い女と一緒じゃなかった？どっち行ったか教えてくんない？何のことどす？とぼけないで。あんた、口の利き方、おかしいんと違います？どきなさいよ。ちょっとお相手願います？
Kokoro refuses, and the two begin fighting until Hayate stops Ayane. In that instant, Kokoro disappeared. Later, in between the events of the third DOA tournament on a Freedom Survivor, Hayate would meet his former caretaker, Hitomi, whose father took him in temporarily while he had amnesia. This would mark the first time Ayane and Hitomi would meet each other, but they immediately get off on the wrong foot due to a misunderstanding which Ayane, well, took personally.
あなたがかすみさんかしら？颯様、この者は？
瞳、なぜその名を？
あのね、アインが倒れた時に呼んでたの、かすみって。それで私をかすみだと決めつけたわけ？
After blowing off steam, Ayane's impressed that Hitomi's karate can stand up to her Hajiman fighting style, or as Hitomi would infamously call it,
Hajime no what now?
Hayate then finally breaks the news to Hitomi that he and Ayane are in fact ninjas.
Later that day, Hayate and Ayane would cross paths with Genfu and his new apprentice, a young boy named Elliot. Genfu asks if they're willing to test out the fruits of his student's training, much to Elliot's reluctance, believing he didn't have the experience to fight two people at once. Hayate scolds him briefly about his mindset before recommending a tag match against Genfu and Elliot, if only to give the latter a boost of confidence. Even after the fight, Elliot was still too humble for his own good, causing Ayane to snap with a slap. Even after berating him, Elliot still maintained his gentle composure and thanked her for the advice, intentional or no. Ayane, not used to such unconditional kindness due to her cynical view of the world, resorted to coping in her own way and left. And this is where we come full circle as to why this interaction between Ayane and Elliot is, in my opinion, one of the more brilliant aspects of the retcon story. Throughout her childhood, Ayane has never known a kind soul in her life that she trusted, besides Hayate and Ayame, whom she recently acknowledged as her mother, having been used to rejection, hostility, and conditional acts of kindness. So when she met Elliot, a boy not much older than herself, who possessed a gentle soul in spite of her harsh demeanor, this tore Ayane's perceived belief of the world as a whole, forcing her to rethink her views. Whether she realized it or not, this, and her mother's prevention of her suicide, would slowly plant the seeds of change she desperately needed. In the end, Ayane is only human, and the continued denial of her humanity, the strength of her sense of duty as a ninja, would have eventually eaten away her soul from the inside. Hayate, Ayane, and now Elliot, in her mind, represented the better aspects of humanity, and even though she wanted to say it to Elliot outright, she respected him in her own way, as we'll see later on in the episode. And who knows, it may be a slow burn leading to something more than respect. Either way, I ship it. And even though focusing on killing Genma herself was a major priority, these other events would probably give better context as to why Ayane didn't immediately try to kill Kasumi the next day, and actually allow the very person she openly envied for years to go see Hayate, despite being very protective of him. If that wasn't an act of compassion by Ayane standards, I don't know what is. Ayane would eventually reveal to Hayate that she wanted to be the one to defeat Genma, having a better understanding of the way he thinks, which Hayate declines. After seeing Genra turn Ayane into a puppet, and making her attack the one person in the village who loved him unconditionally, can you really blame him? As the two are settling their differences, an older drunk named Brad Wong intervenes, overhearing the word Genra, which he believes to be the legendary wine that his master Chen sent him out to find. It wouldn't be long before he made unwanted advances toward Ayane, but Hayate thankfully put a stop to that. As the tournament hit fever pitch, and both Ayane and Hayate advanced round after round, Hayate and Hayabusa would cross paths a second time atop the Azuchi, with Ayane and Irene watching from below. After finally getting a chance to talk alone, Ayane had an opportunity to ask Irene about her connection to Hayabusa, only for her to disappear once again. Concerned, Ayane stopped the fight and warned Hayabusa about Irene's sudden disappearance. On cue, Christy made her presence known to Hayabusa as she held Irene captive, forcing Hayabusa to give chase.
よくぞ見抜いた。剣だ。だが、わしを倒せるか。綾音と共にお前を倒す。
颯様。
育ててやった恩を仇で返すか。
いいえ、父様。これが綾音の最後の孝行。たわけだ。
At the same time, Genra sprang an illusory trap for Ayane and Hayate, forcing them to fight him personally, now enhanced by biotechnology and wearing a full suit of samurai armor, armed with a takusho. Struggling to defeat the superpowered ninja master, Hayabusa intervened at the last possible moment, giving Ayane and Hayate enough time to vanquish Genra with their combined ninpo. Out of respect for raising her to be the strong kunoichi she is today, Ayane, with a shed of a tear, takes Genra's takusho as a memento, then proceeds to walk away from the charred remains of Genra, who, in spite of his actions, was the only man she could truly call her father.